Hi, I am Alex. I am VA part of JAIJ, and I am here to talk about music inspirations. This is the element that can build or release tension. As ours is a thriller film, we obviously want music to build tension. So when we were discussing in a group, we decided we wanted something that wasn't too out there at the start, but kind of built up and would bring tension and help the audience realise the situation more. So I researched and listened to some soundtracks from some classical and fairly modern thriller films. So I chose a couple of aspects that I liked out of each that I listened to, basically. So the first soundtrack I listened to was from Inception. This soundtrack is very melancholy. It sets the atmosphere very, very well, with it building up with more instruments as it goes along. It's very minimalistic at the start, and then it's just by the middle of it. So the more instruments adding in gave it a greater effect, basically. I think this kind of music would be good for a slow motion kind of shot if we did one in our thriller film, but I don't think it would necessarily work with our quite fast-paced police-like entrance. However, the emotional side of our thriller, which would obviously be the female victim, I think this type of music would really bring out sympathy in the audience if we had that playing. So yeah. The second soundtrack I listened to was from Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Got that one right. This is very full on from the start. If you want to know which one it is actually no, scrap that, I don't know what it's called. The second soundtrack I listened to was from Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. This is very full on from the start. It's very orchestral and loud and lots of instruments at the start, but then it slowly dies down to show what I feel is a very unstable atmosphere, as if all is not quite right. There is an eerie note playing for quite a long time. I think that kind of symbolises the stable part. I think the eerie notes and the random pauses in the music, so there'll be like loads of massive instrumental bits and then there'll be hardly anything, so those kind of pauses, I think that would suit our thriller quite well, especially to symbolise our main character, who obviously has the multiple personalities, so it's kind of showing his unstable side, and it can give quite an unnatural atmosphere to quite a real situation. So I think that would definitely give a few hints or clues to the audience, which is what we wanted. The third soundtrack I listened to was from The Maze Runner, which I did my inspirations video on. The violin and strings in this piece provide quite an adequate build-up, and that is what I mainly focused on in this soundtrack, as they added lots of bass to it with the drum beats, which energised and showed that something big was going to happen in that very small musical piece. There we go. I thought that this could be quite good for our 2-minute opening, and by the end of the 2 minutes we want to have the audience realise a big part of our plot, which is obviously that he is the murderer even though he's the detective. So I think the strings and the added drum beats, like they do in this Maze Runner soundtrack, would offer the audience a greater sense of shock by the end. The fourth soundtrack I listened to was from Sin City, which was, I believe, Jacob's inspiration. I really liked this kind of music for Thriller, and it was definitely by far my favourite, just because the guitar riffs and the eerie high notes mixed with the bass really, and this is going to sound so cliche, but it sends shivers down your back, which I also think would add to the effect of a crime scene, which obviously he has walked into. And because of the massive guitar riffs and stuff, I think it shows how much of a shady character our detective is, without the audience realising until the very end of the opening 2 minutes. It sounds like a typical badass cop theme tune, with the high notes showing that there is a deeper meaning to this soundtrack, and the switch between full-on and melancholy could show his unstable state. So the riffs and bass in this is definitely an inspiration of mine to have in our Thriller, but maybe with a more eerie side to it, to show that his disorder does lead him to do some pretty horrific things in context of the other part of the film, which we are not obviously going to do. I then finally looked at the Abduction soundtrack, which is the film that Jess analysed, I think. So during the middle there's a really good part where the violins, they're almost staggered, so it's like, I don't know how to do it, I'm not a musician, but it's very like this, and it's really helped by the distorted drum beats, which then after like a quick second switch is this beautiful piano playing. It switches to a piano part with not the same drum beats, but definitely similar drum beats. Although I don't think the music would quite fit our Thriller, the switch between the two types of music is something that I quite liked, as we could kind of do that when we cut between the scenes, because there's the crime scene and the murder scene, and I think the distinction between the two would be quite good in showing the time difference. I think the crime scene would definitely be quite bassy, and then the emotional murder scene would have quite an eerie, or definitely a complete contrast in sound, which would then help distinguish the difference between the two scenes, and they're not happening at the same time or anything like that. So those were my inspirations for our Thriller music. With an aspect of each of these, I think there should maybe be a difference in the music between the scenes, and have guitar riffs in the crime scene and something like what Inception did, with a bit of the Maze Runner kind of build-up soundtrack in the murder scene, obviously not using their soundtracks. Thank you for watching, and hopefully you will see all these kind of soundtracks applied in our 2-minute opening. Fingers crossed. Okay, bye.